You might have noticed in this example that something risky could happen. What if the user never entered the right answer? What if they just entered 1 over and over and over again? The program would never end. Now what if instead of waiting on user input in the loop could just run as fast as it wanted? What if instead of getting the user's guess each time, we just automatically said each time that the user's guess is 1? I don't know why we do that, but imagine if we did. This would result in something called an infinite loop. A loop that, because of the way it's designed, never stops running. Infinite loops are very easy to create. This simple loop right here is actually an infinite loop. It'll never end. We create our variable I and give it the value 1, and we say to run a loop as long as I is greater than 0. I is currently greater than 0, and so the loop runs, and it prints I. Then it returns to the loop and checks to see if it's done yet. Well, I is still 1, 1 is still greater than 0, and so it repeats again. Then returns and checks to see again, am I done yet? Well, I is still 1, 1 is still greater than 0, so it runs again and again and again, and it'll never stop. It has no reason to stop. This condition will always be true. The result here, which I for some reason don't have over here, would just be that 1 is printed over and 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 over again, infinitely until either your computer crashes or you terminate the program. Infinite loops are errors, but they're interesting errors in that they generally don't give us any actual error message. When we use a variable outside its scope or when we divide by 0, the computer tells us, hey, you can't do that. It gives us something like a name error over here on the right. But when we have an infinite loop in our code, it just runs and runs and runs. And if your code is pretty complex, if you expect it to run for several seconds, it can be tough to tell if it's just running normally and taking a while, or if it's encountered an infinite loop. Print statements can help with this. If you use print debugging and see the same thing printed over and over and over again, often it means you're looping over the same thing over and over and never moving on in a list. I can say personally, I've done that many times, usually just by forgetting to add that last line that increments some loop control variable. So in this loop, I probably meant to conclude it with I minus equals 1. And that would terminate the loop pretty quick. So if you ever find that your code is running for much, much longer than you expect, try adding some print statements and see if you can identify where it's getting caught in an infinite loop.